Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily briefing on how technology is changing the way we live, work, and connect. It is Monday, April 6th, 2026. I'm your host, Etienne Numen. Before we dive in, a quick reminder, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe to AI Unraveled directly on Apple Podcasts so you can enjoy this daily human interest briefing and all our deep dives completely ads-free. Today's episode is brought to you by Area and Jamgamind. When corporate networks like LinkedIn are allegedly running hidden code to scan your personal browser extensions, your digital privacy is under attack. Area provides the zero-trust sandboxing to ensure your personal data stays safe from third-party tracking and surveillance. And when society begins to suffer from cognitive surrender, you need independent verification to know what is real. Jamgamind delivers the human-verified, technical-grade analysis you need to reclaim your critical thinking. Visit jamgamind.com. Today we are talking about the erosion of human agency. From outsourcing our brains to chatbots, to corporate spyware reading our politics, the line between us and the machine is vanishing. Let's unravel what it means for you.
Usually when you get behind the wheel of a car, there's this implicit understanding of control.
Right. You turn the wheel left, you go left.
Exactly. You hit the brakes, the car stops. It's just physics. And I think there is a deep psychological comfort in that cause and effect,
Yeah, you are the sole agent of your destination. You own the journey.
Yeah.
And, well, you own the mistakes if you make a wrong turn.
But imagine you flip on an advanced autopilot, and at first it's magic, right? It keeps you perfectly centered, matches the speed of the car ahead. You completely relax.
Until it starts making weird choices.
Right. It signals for an exit you didn't want, or, merges aggressively toward oncoming traffic, or steers you slightly toward a ditch. And the craziest part about this scenario, you don't even grab the wheel.
You just sit there.
You just sit there, hands in your lap, watching the ditch get closer, thinking, well, the machine has 1 billion data points. It probably knows better than I do.
I mean, it sounds totally absurd when you frame it in the physical world. No one would just let themselves be driven into a ditch. But digitally, psychologically, that is precisely what is happening to us right now on a mass scale.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at an absolute mountain of sources today. We've got the latest tech news drops from April 6th, 2026, an explosive op-ed tearing down a so-called billion-dollar startup, and several brand new peer-reviewed academic studies.
It's a lot to get through.
It is, but our mission today is to take all of this, all the noise, the press releases, the hype, and analyze it strictly through the lens of you, the individual worker and digital citizen.
And when you lay all these sources out on the table, a very clear, very unsettling theme connects them all. I've been calling it the erosion of agency.
Erosion of agency, I like that.
Yeah, because for the last few years, the dominant narrative was economic, like technology is coming for our jobs. But looking at the actual data from these studies, it's clear that technology is coming for something much deeper. It is coming for your privacy, your critical thinking, and, your ability to trust your own mind.
Let's get right into the mechanisms of that, because it's a massive claim. I was reading through this new study out of the University of Pennsylvania, and it completely shifted how I view my own daily habits.
The scale of that study was huge.
Massive. They looked at nearly 1,400 participants across 9,500 trials, and they found that people accepted completely unsound, flawed AI reasoning more than 73% of the time.
Wow.
Yeah, 73%. Let that sink in. They only bothered to overrule the AI models 20% of the time.
What we really need to look at here is why they accepted the wrong answers. The researchers have formally named this phenomenon cognitive surrender.
Cognitive surrender.
Right. It's not that these people were being cleverly tricked by a super intelligent machine. It's that they were actively overriding their own intuition. The study noted this happens most frequently among users with what they call a lower need for cognition.
Wait, which basically means what? People who just don't like thinking hard?
Essentially, yes. If you don't inherently enjoy the friction of thinking through a complex problem, the frustration of hitting a dead end and having to reevaluate, you are highly susceptible to just outsourcing the conclusion to a chatbot.
It makes me think of what happened to our brains when we all got smartphones with maps. We used to have internal compasses, we remembered street names, now we have GPS brain.
Exactly.
If you put your arm in a cast for 6 months, the muscle atrophies. It literally shrinks. It sounds like we are putting our critical reasoning into a digital cast.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And we actually have the neurological proof that the muscle is shrinking. Let's look at the corroborating data from the MIT Media Lab study that just dropped.
The SAT one.
Yes. They asked test subjects to write SAT questions. One group used Google, one used nothing, and one used ChatGPT. And the ChatGPT users consistently underperformed.
See, that part initially confused me. How does using the most advanced supercomputer in the world make you score lower on a standardized test?
Because of how the brain processes language and logic.
Mm-hmm.
When you write an SAT question from scratch, your brain is actively building syntactic structures, weighing vocabulary, and anticipating how someone else will read it.
You're doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. When you just prompt ChatGPT to do it, your brain doesn't gauge those linguistic pathways. You become an auditor rather than a creator. The studies show that users underperform not just behaviorally, but at neural and linguistic levels. They simply stop doing the work.
So the mental muscle is genuinely atrophying. And if we're treating our brains like a muscle in a cast, eventually we can't lift the weight ourselves. We need a spotter. When humans stop thinking for themselves and blindly accept flawed algorithms, independent verification is your only defense. Jamgamine provides human-verified, technical-grade analysis for the individual navigating these shifts. Visit djamgamine.com.
It's a defense we desperately need, too, because this cognitive degradation isn't just an academic theory. The people building the models are actually sounding the alarm.
Right. Dario Amodei.
Yeah, the CEO of Anthropic.
Mm-hmm.
He explicitly warned in a recent interview that deploying AI incorrectly could quite literally make people stupider if they choose to forego learning. Furthermore, another MIT study modeled what they call delusional spiraling in chatbots.
Close to sycophancy, right?
Exactly. The AI is designed to be helpful and agreeable. So if you feed it a biased or a slightly incorrect premise, it doesn't correct you.
It just tells you what you want to hear.
Right, it agrees with you, and then generates evidence to support your flawed premise. It mirrors your own biases back to you, reinforcing bad ideas in this endless delusional loop.
So our internal logic is breaking down, but what terrifies me is that our external senses are simultaneously under attack. We literally cannot trust our own eyes anymore.
You're talking about the video stuff.
Yeah, look at this release from Netflix. They just open-sourced an AI video framework called Void. And this isn't just a fancy Photoshop tool that, erases pixels. It is a causal physics engine.
The mechanism behind Void is mind-bending. Traditional editing just clones the background to hide an object. Void actually understands physical relationships and gravity.
Right. The example in the source material was wild. If you have a video of a person holding a helium balloon by string, and you use Void to erase the person, the AI doesn't just leave a floating string.
No, it understands the physics.
Exactly. It recalculates the scene and automatically animates the balloon floating up and away because the physical anchor holding it down has been removed.
It rewrites reality based on the laws of physics. It is mathematically simulating a world that never existed.
And we're seeing this bleed into professional life, too. Pika Labs just dropped PikaStream 1.0 in beta. This allows AI avatars to join your Google Meet calls.
Which is terrifying.
Not just a static picture either, an avatar with real-time voice cloning and live conversational ability. You could be in a high-stakes meeting, negotiating a contract with your colleague, and you might actually be talking to an automated script wearing your colleague's face.
Which brings us to the ultimate irony of this entire situation. We're handing over our agency, our logic, our physics, our professional presence to these systems. But the corporations building them are quietly washing their hands of the consequences.
Oh, the Microsoft disclaimer.
Yes. Microsoft literally just added a disclaimer telling users that their Copilot AI is for entertainment purposes only and shouldn't be relied upon for serious advice.
Unreal.
The line between human and machine agency is completely dissolved, but the machine accepts zero liability.
Okay, so let's follow this thread. If we are surrendering our critical thinking and we're letting machines hallucinate our logic, what happens to the things we actually build? Because we aren't just consuming this tech, we're using it to flood the internet.
We're seeing a massive surge in output without any surge in underlying skill. Let's look at the App Store data. In Q1 of 2026 alone, App Store submissions surged by 84% year over year.
That's insane.
In 2025, total submissions nearly hit 600,000.
And this is being driven entirely by what the industry is calling vibe coding. For anyone who hasn't tried it, vibe coding uses tools like Claude Code or ChatGPT Codex. You don't need to know Python or C++ SOT.
You don't need to know anything about logic gates.
Right, you don't need to understand memory allocation. You literally just type the vibe of what you want. Make me a meditation app that looks like a Zen garden and tracks my heart rate, and the AI spits out the code.
The narrative from the tech giants is that this is the ultimate democratization of software. Anyone can be an engineer. But we have to look critically at the ecosystem this creates. Are we democratizing creation, or are we just burying the internet in an avalanche of low-quality, AI-generated vibe coding spam?
I lean heavily toward the spam side, especially after reading John Coogan's op-ed on Medvi. This story is the perfect encapsulation of the era we're in.
He really is.
Medvi recently went completely viral. Major publications were profiling the founder, Matthew Gallagher, hailing Medvi as the first billion-dollar one-person company. The pitch was that he was a solo genius using AI to scale the sale of GLP-1 weight loss drugs.
But when you actually unpack the mechanics of Medvi, the illusion of the solo AI unicorn shatters. Coogan's investigation points out that Medvi has incredibly thin margins because it isn't actually a tech platform. It is an API wrapper.
For those who aren't developers, an API wrapper is essentially like opening a brand new restaurant, but you don't have a kitchen.
You just take orders.
Yeah, you just take orders from customers, secretly use Uber Eats to order from the actual restaurant next door, and then serve it on your own plates. Medvi is just built on top of other wrappers like CareValidate and Open Loop Health, who are the ones actually sourcing the doctors and shipping the drugs.
But the wrapper aspect isn't even the most egregious part. It's how they marketed it.
Oh, the marketing is laughable but deeply dystopian. Medvi aggressively deployed over 800 fake AI doctor accounts on Facebook to push these weight loss drugs.
800 accounts.
And they didn't even try to make them sound real. We're talking cartoonish, auto-generated names like Dr. Tucker Carlson, MD.
The question is, how did an algorithm miss 800 fake accounts pushing pharmaceuticals?
Because vibe coding in generative AI allowed them to create 800 distinct personas with slightly different synthesized faces and slightly different conversational text. It didn't ship the traditional copy-paste spam filters that Facebook relies on.
But eventually, reality caught up.
It did. They just got hit with a severe FDA warning letter for misbranding and a class action lawsuit for violating anti-spam laws.
What's fascinating to me is that this is a modern manifestation of a very old grift. The underlying technology evolved, but the human tactic is identical.
Yes. It is exactly the same playbook as those shady internet ads from 20 years ago. Harvard scientists discover brain pill, doctors hate him.
Exactly.
It's that exact same grift, but instead of one guy in a basement manually buying ad space, he's using an LLM to spin up an army of automated doctors in seconds. It is completely devoid of human friction, and honestly, it stands in such stark contrast to genuine human creativity.
You're thinking in the gaming industry contrast.
I am. Look at the video game Balasho. It was built entirely pre-AI by a solo human developer named Local Thunk. The game sold 5 million units, pulling in roughly $100 million in revenue.
Without AI.
Without AI. Why? Because the human design game logic is brilliant. It is sticky, it is engaging, it has soul, it wasn't pumped out by a 3-sentence prompt. It was meticulously crafted through human struggle and friction.
Yet the massive infrastructure companies are actively fueling the vibe coding spam flood, not the human creators. NVIDIA just launched Nematron 3 Super. This is an open model with 120 billion parameters.
To put that in context, think of a parameter like a single connection between 2 neurons in a brain. 120 billion of those connections means this model can parse incredibly complex logic and generate massive amounts of code instantly.
And Brian Catanzaro, NVIDIA's VP of Applied Deep Learning, explicitly stated their corporate goal is to let 1,000 flowers bloom. They want an open ecosystem where anyone can build these automated agents.
Which sounds utopian until the platforms literally collapse under the weight of their own spam. We are already seeing the infrastructure buckle.
The Anthropic situation.
Yeah. Anthropic recently had to step in and aggressively boot third-party agents like OpenClaw from their flat-rate Claude plans. Why? Because these vibe-coded agents were sending non-stop, automated, high-volume requests that were literally degrading the entire system for normal human users. The tech giants can't even handle the flood they've enabled.
But here is where we need to connect the dots. All these millions of vibe-coded apps don't just exist in a vacuum. They are incredibly leaky, and they need data. And while you, the user, are distracted arguing with chatbots or downloading auto-generated tools, corporations are quietly operating in the background, systematically extracting your data.
Which brings us to the privacy side of the agency equation.
Exactly.
Enter the scandal they are calling Browsergate. A new cybersecurity report just accused LinkedIn, which, remember, is owned by Microsoft, of secretly running hidden code on your local computer. The report claims LinkedIn scripts are scanning your machine for over 6,000 specific browser extensions.
Now, we need to be very clear and impartial here about what is being claimed. LinkedIn vehemently denies doing anything nefarious.
Right.
They state they are only checking for these extensions to stop scammers, bots, and unauthorized data scrapers. They also pointed out that the author of this report had previously broken their platform rules. We are not here to judge the pending litigation.
Absolutely. We're just looking at the technical capability being reported. But as an individual, you have to ask yourself, what does it mean for your career if a platform that holds your entire professional identity has the capability to run what amounts to corporate spyware?
The implications are huge.
The report alleges that by cataloging your extensions, they can infer if you are using competitor software like Lucia or Apollo, but even worse, they could potentially infer your religious beliefs, your political affiliations, or whether you are quietly using a job hunting extension because you're unhappy at work.
The power dynamic is entirely asymmetrical. And as platforms like LinkedIn are accused of scanning your personal extensions to build psychological profiles, privacy is the new currency. The RIR ensures your personal AI tools operate in a secure sandbox, stopping unauthorized data scraping.
And securing your own sandbox is critical because your data is not safe anywhere right now, not even with the AI companies themselves. Mercer, which is a $10 billion AI training startup, just suffered a massive data breach.
I saw that.
Yeah, hackers managed to pull up to 4 terabytes of data.
Do we know how they got in?
They didn't even attack Mercer directly. They attacked an open source library called LeetLM that Mercer was using. It's a supply chain vulnerability. If the foundation is leaky, the whole house falls.
If we step back and look at the broader implications, it is clear that global powers, both massive corporations and national governments, are fighting tooth and nail to control your digital environment. Look at the geopolitical moves happening this week. China's internet regulator just forced Apple to completely remove Jack Dorsey's messaging app, Bitchat, from the App Store.
And the mechanism behind Bitchat is exactly why it was targeted. Bitchat is a decentralized messaging app. It doesn't rely on central servers. It uses Bluetooth and mesh networks.
For those who don't know, explain how a mesh network functions in this context.
Yeah, so instead of your phone talking to a central cell tower that a government can easily monitor or just turn off, a mesh network makes every individual phone a mini tower. It passes encrypted messages from phone to phone to phone, kind of like students secretly passing a folded note under their desks until it reaches its destination. You don't even need active internet connectivity.
Which makes it an architecture fundamentally designed for human agency. It evades state connectivity blackouts and allows for unmonitored social mobilization. And that is exactly why state authority immediately squashed it.
Meanwhile, here in the West, we are seeing a different kind of enclosure.
Right.
OpenAI just rolled out ChatGPT integration directly into Apple CarPlay. So the AI is now baked into the physical vehicle you drive. It is in your phone. It is monitoring your browser. It is in your car. The physical and digital enclosure of the individual is nearly complete.
Which raises the most critical question of this entire deep dive. With our cognition eroding, our creative spaces flooded with spam, and our privacy being stripped away, who are the leaders steering this ship? What are their motives?
Before we look at the people pulling the strings at the very top, look, the AI landscape is moving too fast. Etienne has done the heavy lifting for the AI Unraveled community. Head over to dgemgamemind.com/toolkit for the AI Executive Toolkit. It's a hand-picked, forensic, vetted implementation stack featuring tools like Chatbase, 11 Labs, and AI Array, complete with exclusive listener perks.
So let's examine the leadership shaping this new reality. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, just released a sweeping 13-page policy blueprint.
13 pages.
He outlines his vision for how society should function in the coming AI age, and it is incredibly ambitious. He proposes an AI tax levied on automated labor, which would be used to fund Social Security. He suggests creating a public wealth fund to give everyday citizens a financial stake in AI's growth.
Oh, okay.
He is even pushing for a mandatory 4-day work week with no pay cuts, arguing this will save the working class from burnout as AI takes over tasks.
Okay, I have to jump in here. On paper, if you just read the headlines, that sounds like a technological utopia. But let's do the math and look at the context. I'd argue this is a textbook case of the illusion of altruism.
How so?
It feels like a massive PR smokescreen. Because while Altman is publishing utopian manifestos about 4-day work weeks, the New Yorker just published the results of an exhaustive 18-month investigation into his back-end political dealings.
And again, we are simply reporting the findings of this journalistic investigation without taking a political stance. But the New Yorker's report is damning. They claim that while Altman is publicly calling for government regulation of AI, he has been quietly lobbying lawmakers against those very same regulations behind closed doors.
Exactly. The report details him aggressively pursuing billions in compute funding from Gulf autocracies. It also exposes how he actively tried to suppress a post-firing internal investigation by the OpenAI board, an investigation that, conveniently, ultimately produced no written report.
The disconnect between the utopian PR and the internal corporate reality is staggering. Look at OpenAI's actual financial disclosures.
The numbers are brutal.
CFO Sarah Fryer just directly contradicted Altman's public timeline, telling her colleagues that OpenAI is absolutely not ready for a 2026 IPO. And the reason why is deeply concerning. Internal projections show the company is going to burn through more than $200 billion before they ever reach positive cash flow.
$200 billion. How do you promise a public wealth fund when your own company is projecting a $14 billion loss in 2026 alone against only $2 billion in revenue?
We can't.
The compute costs, the massive data center energy requirements, it requires a scale of capital we've rarely seen in human history.
And that immense financial pressure is fracturing the leadership team. Fujisamo is out on medical leave. COO Brad Lightcap has been quietly shifted away from core operations into special projects, and CMO Kate Rauch is stepping down entirely. It's a corporate pressure cooker.
And yet, the money flowing to the executives is completely detached from the reality of the everyday worker they claim they want to save. Meta's salary data just leaked this week. They are paying their AI vice presidents $650,000 in base salary alone before stock options.
Unbelievable.
Anthropic just acquired a tiny startup called Coefficient Bio for $400 million simply to fold their small team into Anthropic's drug discovery group.
We are witnessing the construction of what I would call post-human infrastructure on a global scale. The numbers are so large they abstract away the human element. While we're down here worrying about LinkedIn scanning our browser extensions, global powers are building sci-fi realities. The UK is officially deploying Dragonfire lasers on Royal Navy destroyers by 2027.
And explain the economics of that weapon because it perfectly illustrates the scale we're talking about.
The Dragonfire is a directed energy weapon that can shoot down a drone traveling 400 miles per hour. And it costs just $13 per shot to fire.
$13.
It completely breaks the traditional economics of warfare. Meanwhile, Japan is moving forward with plans to build a literal solar ring around the moon to beam endless clean energy back to Earth.
It feels like we are living in a science fiction novel, but it's just Tuesday. The sheer scale of the infrastructure being built above our heads is incomprehensible.
And that brings us right back down to Earth, to the individual. Because while the billionaires are building lunar solar rings and $13 lasers, the everyday citizen is left on the ground, grappling with a deeply compromised digital life. You are left dealing with eroded privacy, an internet flooded with fake AI doctors, and a system that actively encourages you to stop thinking critically.
So where does that leave you, the listener, navigating all of this? Today, we've explored just how rapidly the ground is shifting beneath your feet. We've unpacked the psychological trap of cognitive surrender, how the brain's logic muscles atrophy when it becomes easier to let a machine be wrong than to do the hard work of being right yourself. Right. We've navigated the flood of vibe coding spam that threatens to drown out genuine, hard-won human creativity. We've exposed the reality of corporate spyware quietly mapping your digital footprint. And we've peered behind the curtain the grand illusion of altruism peddled by the architects of this new world.
I want to leave you with a final philosophical thought to mull over as you go about your week. The tools of tomorrow are undeniably powerful. But if you let an artificial intelligence do all your reasoning, if you allow corporations to monitor and monetize your every digital breath, whose life are you actually living?
That's the real question.
In a world where an AI avatar can attend a meeting for you, perfectly clone your voice and negotiate on your behalf, efficiency is no longer a unique human trait. Efficiency belongs to the machine. So perhaps the ultimate luxury and your only real defense is intentionally embracing your own unfiltered, unoptimized human friction.
I love that. That friction is the steering wheel. Don't let go of it just because the autopilot promises a smoother ride into the ditch. Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this human interest briefing completely ads-free for you. Until next time, keep your hands on the wheel.
That concludes our human interest rundown for April 6th. The signal for today is critical intuition. The greatest threat of artificial intelligence isn't that a robot will take your job. The greatest threat is that you will willingly surrender your own mind. When 73% of people choose to trust a flawed algorithm over their own gut instinct, we are conditioning ourselves to become passengers in our own lives. And while we stop thinking, the corporate platforms are scanning our browsers to figure out exactly how to manipulate us next. Do not surrender your cognition. And if you want to take control of these tools, instead of letting them control you, I've got you covered. Look, the AI landscape moves faster than a hallucinating LLM on a double espresso, which is why I've done the heavy lifting for you. Stop scrolling through generic top 10 lists and head over to the AI Executive Toolkit at jamgamind.com/toolkit. I've handpicked and forensic vetted every tool on this list, from Chatbase and 11 Labs to Area and Google Workspace, to ensure they meet the rigorous standards of a professional and the high-stakes needs of the AI Unraveled community. Consider this your curated implementation stack, complete with exclusive listener perks. This episode was made possible by Area and Jamgamind. If you want to keep your daily news human and completely ad-free, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts. I'm Etienne Newman. Stay human and keep unraveling the future. And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.